Hello and welcome to Snide's Return, a tabletop roleplay podcast. My guest today is taking us on TTRPG journeys from dark fantasy through a dark alternate present to a dystopian future, leading us through the mirth and the mayhem that may befall us as we travel. He has made himself a bane of one type of creature, but has created so many more for us to encounter. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome Freely Publishing's game designer Magnus Seter to the show. Magnus, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for asking me to join. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Magnus, before we get into the sort of the meat of why I invited you on, and thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today, how did you yourself get into tabletop role-playing games, please?
I started in 1982. I had always been a Star Wars, not always been a Star Wars fan, but I was a huge Star Wars fan and had sort of drifted into reading Tolkien and C.S. Lewis books. And then one Christmas, my good friend Thomas called me and said that he had received a Christmas gift with an amazing new game. So we went. I went over there and we played the first edition of what you English-speaking people know as Dragonbane, what we in Sweden know as Drakar och Demoner. So that was the start with the classic Swedish first edition box with a very chaotic set of rules, very rough around the edges, and very much in need of house ruling and everything like that. But it really caught me by the I don't know what you say, but it really caught me, and I became obsessed with role playing games. So that was the start, and we then drifted away from Dragonbane and played a lot of Dungeons & Dragons, the basic expert companion set. We never made it to master set, but still basic expert companion was several years. Then we moved on to AD&D, played Ravenloft and a lot of other stuff, and also Call of Cthulhu.
Okay.
Which for a long time was my favorite game. It's I don't know what really grabbed me, but with Cthulhu, but I think the contemporary style, of course, with the 1920s contemporary, and also the horror element, and also it's more of a role-playing game than Dungeons & Dragons was, or at least that's how we played it. I'm of the opinion that you can use any role-playing game to play role-playing games, basically. So I don't think that it's impossible to play heavy role-play games with Dungeons and Dragons if you want to do that, and you have a group that is focused on that aspect of it. It's possible. But for us, it turned out that Call of Cthulhu was the game that brought out the role-playing in us. And then, of course, I encountered a game called Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which combined fantasy and horror, and with emphasis on role-playing and this very British humor that we Scandinavians enjoy. So I played a lot of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So that's sort of like the basics, and then drifted into cyberpunk, and then in '89 I started writing games for publishing. I started writing for Cyberpunk 2020, and then I did some mutant stuff, some Dragonbane stuff, and I worked on the second edition of Kult. But the biggest assignment up till Bitter Reach, which is also for Free League a couple of years ago, and the monster book now, the Bestiary, was I co-wrote the Mutant Chronicles role-playing game.
Amazing. So not only have you wandered through, which I alluded to in the introduction, many themes and genres, but different game mechanics, game styles, play styles, fantastic. So rewinding a little bit further back, what was the instigator from going from role player and just enjoying the games as a product to becoming a creator and a writer. Where was that leap? What sort of inspired you to sort of step into that side of things?
That was always a natural progression for me. I've always been a writer. I've enjoyed writing since I was little, and every time we had in school, we had sort of like every Friday you got 1 hour where you could do what you wanted. And I wrote short Wild West stories, basically. And then I wrote some short Star Wars stories, and then I wrote other stuff just that no one has ever read. And I don't, well, I was like 8, 9, 10, so it's what it is. But I always wanted to write. So when I started playing role-playing games, it was natural for me to also start writing stuff for the role-playing games, house rules to start with. And then I sort of like had a typewriter, and I hammered out basically a copy of Misty Isles, which is in the Dragonbane Secret of the Dragon Emperor campaign for Free League. I basically copied that format, and then I started writing for my friends, and then I started writing for conventions.
Okay.
And me and my friend, who is Dan Alistrand, he's the layout artist for many of the Free League games. We ran for several years cyberpunk adventures at many of the biggest role-playing cons in Sweden, and we had the help of the game masters. So we regularly drew in about 30 games,
Wow.
30 or 20 or 30 games each convention, which is big in Sweden. And of course, if we wanted to do that, I had to write adventures that people could use and that people could play, and that engaged the players in interesting scenarios and scenes. And I think that shaped me as well as a writer, to sort of like aim for something immediate in everything I write, something that really picks you up and says, "Oh, this is cool. This is fun. This is something I want to look further into," whether it be Cult or Cyberpunk or Dragonbane or Fancy Roleplay or something like that.
I was going to ask, building on, and you've kind of answered it, but I feel I owe it to myself to finish the question. What were some of the challenges that you faced through your progress of becoming a game designer? You mentioned there about making it sort of almost pick up and play and attractive to the game masters and the players. But what else have you learned through your time as a game designer?
I've tried shedding the tropes, but also embracing what works. Sort of subverting the tropes is a good thing. And at first, I was because I was young. I was around 20. I was really. I had grown up with all the popular culture and tried to emulate that, and that was fine for the time because no one else had done anything different from that. But as I've grown as a game writer, I've sort of, at least I think I have sort of figured out how to relate to the tropes and not use the more problematic ones. Much of my early cyberpunk material is not really that good, and it has a sexist vibe because that was the genre at the time. If you look at Blade Runner, for example, this is a huge influence on me, but it has a sort of misogynistic streak, and that was a lot of at least the more accessible cyberpunk material also had that. The guys were the heroes, and the Japanese were the villains, and women were mostly eye candy, and stuff like that I sort of shed along the way, sort of like, okay, that was the younger me, but now I need to do stuff that is more interesting for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So having sort of learned and sort of molded and changed it sort of brings us up to where we are with Dragonbane at the moment. But before we move on to that, and I want to make sure we sort of spend a decent time and I don't interrupt that too much, where can we find you? Where can we find Dragonbane? Where can we find all the things Free League and sort of that whole thing you are associated with, in other words, you're associated with, please?
I'm not a huge social media person except for Facebook. So for Dragonbane, you can most easily find me in the Dragonbane Facebook group. I am also a member of the Discord, the Dragonbane Discord channel, which is fabulous. It's a huge resource, and Tobias and Matthias, who are running it, are doing bang up job with that, and I recommend everyone to join the Dragonbane Discord group. It's fabulous. I don't use Discord that often. I use it for some meetings, and I forget to check in regularly. So if someone wants to get hold of me, Facebook is probably one of the best ways, unless you speak Swedish. Because if you speak Swedish, you can go to the site rollspel.nu, rollspel.nu, which is a discussion forum that I run together with a lot of other people, which is a role-playing forum that has been in different iterations and under different management, has been running since 1999. And there's an active group of people there. And since I sort of run it and I moderate it, I need to be there every day. So Swedes, you can go to rollspel.nu, and everyone else, you can probably ask for me on the Facebook group for Dragonbane. Or if you just want to ask someone at the Discord, they will always say, "Well, I'll give him a ring, and I'll see if he can show up."
Fair enough. Well, I will make sure there are links that you mentioned there, as well as to Free League and the Free League's website and all those sort of good things, so we can support the game, support people such as yourselves, the creators, and keep that good community feeling going. So now moving on to Dragonbane itself, just as a snapshot for those that may have seen it on Drive-Thru RPG, may have seen it on the Free League website or whichever social media platform it appears, Kickstarter or others. Very briefly, what is Dragonbane as a TTRPG for someone coming into this hobby, please?
It's interesting for people not from Sweden, because Dragonbane is what Dungeons and Dragons is for the rest of the world. In Sweden, Dragonbane has the place of Dungeons and Dragons. It is the role-playing game. It is the fantasy game. It's even the case that if you would translate Dungeons and Dragons in movies or books, and you would have someone mention, well, he plays Dungeons and Dragons. In Sweden, they would translate it to, he plays Drakar och Demoner, which annoyed TSR immensely, of course. But so that's the baseline. It's the dominant role playing game in Sweden, which I find extremely interesting, since the discussion around Dungeons and Dragons in the States often sort of assumes that Dungeons and Dragons is the ideal role playing game because it is the dominant role playing game, and thus it proves that it is has the best rules and stuff like that. Whereas we in Sweden, we have another dominant role playing game, and the Germans and the Austrians, they had the Schwarze Auge, which of course it was the Dungeons and Dragons clone. But that was the biggest one there. The Dungeons and Dragons isn't the biggest game everywhere in the world. And in Sweden, Dragonbane is the biggest game. And it's also different from Dungeons and Dragons, in my opinion, since it's a very much intimate game. It's a smaller game. And I don't mean small as in it got tiny, tiny books, but it's sort of like, if you look at Dragonbane today, you get a valley, the Misty Vale, to adventure in, and there's like 14 adventures set in the Misty Vale. Of course, people want more, so there are more stuff coming from third parties, of course. But it's at its core, Dragonbane is much more I would say it's closer to the PCs. The world is much closer. It's not, there aren't any 20 level adventures running around. There aren't even 10th level adventurers running around. There are adventures, but they are much more in tune with the world around them. And it's deadly, of course. It's more brutal than for example, Dungeons and Dragons. At its roots, it is basic role playing from Chaosium. So it started out as a translation of Magic World, and sort of evolved from that. Sometimes parallel with the development of basic role playing mechanics, but also in different other ways. It's even though we were a huge market for role playing games during the 80s, even for American, English, foreign game companies. We have sort of like our own style when it comes to role playing games that is more grounded, that is more low fantasy, and more sort of like rooted in the Norse mythology. When Americans play games where they talk about dragons and stuff like that, it's sort of like, maybe I'm insulting people here now, but that's sort of like acquired mythology for them, whereas for us, it's our mythology. So trolls is not what trolls are in Dungeons and Dragons. Trolls are the Jon Bauer trolls with huge big noses and turn to stone when it's the sun comes out, and there are lots of different, let me say, themes that are sort of like closer to us. We of course we didn't. Most of us don't live the Asa belief nowadays, but still, it's not that long ago that we had the Vikings and the Thor and Odin and all the other gods in the Norse mythology, and the local superstitions and everything, and that's sort of like. For Americans, for example, that's a more foreign concept, but for us, that was what we grew up with. It's sort of we knew about everything that was in the books because, well, that's a monster from our mythology or for something close to us. So a Dragonbane is in my opinion a game that is much closer to us as a player, as players, basically. And it's not as glossy as Dungeons & Dragons can be. Of course, if you play Ravenloft, Dungeons & Dragons or Dark Sun, it might not be that glossy, but still, Dragonbane is much more in this feel. It's much more akin to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, for example.
I do love the you're saying about the way it looks, the artwork throughout the books, the Bestiary, which we'll get on to shortly. The GM screen, which is available via Free League and drive through, as well as the sort of the core set that you can pick up, which has the rules and the adventures, standees, which I love. Cardboard standees, they are easy to move around, easy to play with.
Oh yeah.
Well, so there are so many fantastic things about this as a physical product, but we're here to sort of look into all the aspects and especially the ones that you've worked on. So from what has been released in sort of the core rules and the core set to now with this Bestiary for Dragonbane, what has been the most exciting part of expanding on the beasts that were available to the GMs to start with?
I think the most exciting part for me was to be asked. Actually,
fair enough.
That's I'm the only writer who's written for all three publishers of Dragonbane. So I was happy when I got to contribute my adventure Trollspire to the box, and that was that's a good example of what I mean by a closer, more intimate setting and adventure. So if people are like, well, what does it mean? If you read Trollspire, you sort of like can get a drift of what I'm thinking there. But the most exciting thing about the getting to work on the Bestiary was that it was such a monumental expansion back in the days. It was maybe the third, fourth book that was released for Dragonbane, and it was really an injection to every gaming group out there. It's like, we didn't, because the basic Dragonbane set has never had sort of like a monster book. So you got a handful of monsters in the rules, and then we got the monster book. But the monster book has also never been as rich with monsters as, for example, the Monster Manual for Dungeons and Dragons, AD&D, which maybe had like 100 monsters. It's always been sort of like focused on describing the monsters, like 50, 60, 70, even back in the days. That was sort of like what we felt was needed. But and that book was so influential that when Free League asked me if I wanted to help them with the Bestiary for this version of the game, I just couldn't say no. And I thought, well, this is going to be really, really a lot of fun. Mostly because I've sort of never been a monster person as a writer before. I've mostly written scenarios, but with Dragonbane, I started writing third-party monsters that are published in the Swedish gaming magazine Phoenix. And that's actually why Free League sort of like, oh yeah, we can ask Magnus for help because he's written these monsters and that works. So he can probably help us with that. But I also felt that the format for the monsters in the Dragonbane game opens up for creativity, for my creativity at least. And it's difficult to pin down what it is, but it's a format that I feel is fun to work with, and which sort of leaves a bit about our drier tradition of writing in Sweden. We could have sort of like really dry writing. We are more. I'm not a huge expert on Han, but we hew closer to Han style of writing than we hew to the Dungeons Dragons style of writing. It's much more what we call pig farming in Sweden, and it's not hero 0 to hero. It's sort of like 0 to 0.5. So, yeah. But the fun thing was that yeah, okay, I get to work on with the beasts, and I then thought, okay, I've done some mistakes during my design life, and one of them was, for example, working with the second edition of Kult, where we, Target Games and me, sort of did some really major changes to the game. To appease the criticism, of course, we removed magic. We removed a lot of stuff that people took affront to, and sort of gutted the game. So now that I wanted to write the monsters in the Bestiary, I wanted to go back and pick up the old stuff and sort of not pay homage, but still to use that as an inspiration, as a source to and update that to the new format, basically. So if you would look at the first monster book, was released in 1984 or 5 or something like that. Many of the basic concepts there are in the new Bestiary, and I feel that me as an older gamer, I think I'm sort of like perfect for doing that. And so much that I was there, I played the game, and I know what people liked, and I know that people like that kind of thing in Sweden, at least. For English-speaking people, the first monster book from last century isn't that interesting, but for us, it is. And I felt that, well, I can update that, and I can sort of like try to make them more interesting and immediate and more playable than they were back in the days.
All right. Well, so the Bestiary that's or the Dragonbane Bestiary is I'll just give a couple of statistics almost. It's 156 pages from cover to cover. It has wonderful artwork throughout. It's broken into effectively 9 sections, which breaks down the monsters to separate out for ease of use by the GM in that respect. But what I love, and I sort of had a look through, sort of doing the research for this, and so one of the things I like about Dragonbane is that there is a roll table for the monsters or beasts to strike, and they always attack in that respect, or it always succeeds. And that's one of the mechanics I love about this game. It's been mentioned by other TTRPG folk as well. So, from a design perspective and from a thematic perspective, what has been the most engaging or interesting entry into the bestiary for you to create mechanically, and which has been the most interesting for you thematically?
It's a difficult question. When Freely contacted me, they said that, well, we need someone who can write some monsters for us. And I said, yes, of course, I can help. Yeah, can you write 60? and I said, sure, I'll do 60. But writing 60 Dragonbane monsters in 2.5 months sort of models everything up. It's sometimes difficult for me to remember. So, what was that? What happened then? What was I thinking then? But I do remember that what really struck me as the mechanical part of building a monster that I enjoyed the most was the monster attacks that you alluded to earlier. Because if you look at a Dragonbane monster today, it's made up of 3 sections. It's the description, and it's the stats and the abilities, and then there are the monster attacks. And since the monster attacks are auto hit, as you said, you really have to think about how that will change the encounter, basically, and try to make it so that the attacks do change the encounter as well, so that it's not a static hit and miss, hit and miss, hit and miss, which plagued the earlier versions of the game, where you had sort of like attacks and they would miss and they would hit and they would miss and they would hit. Now it's more like, okay, it's a monster, it hits. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it means that you can shape the encounter, and you have for most monsters there's 6 monster attacks. For smaller monsters, 3 or 4 or something. I did write a swarm of rats. Someone asked for a swarm of rats on the Facebook group, and I wrote that. And I think I only had 3 attacks or something like that. But most of them have 6 attacks, and sitting down trying to think, okay, how can I make this interesting? How can I make this fun? And how can I make this not just a run-of-the-mill attack? Which is difficult, since you write 60 monsters, you write 6 attacks for each. That's 360 attacks, monster attacks. Not every monster attack will be unique, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's that's the name of the game, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So that was interesting. But the most interesting monster thematically, I think, are the undead.
Okay.
Or the sort of like, not the larger undead, but the major undead, like a vampire or monsters like that, because I feel there's some sort of freedom when inventing the attacks for the undead. You can sort of like gaze from the crypt, and you can sort of give them fanciful names, and that's one thing that Free League did after when they've got my material and developed it further. I think they also added a lot of flares to the monster attacks, when it comes to names, for example, and effects and stuff like that. But undead are really, to me, that they are the most interesting. I did write a lich for another for the Vindheim Kickstarter. That is being published now, and that was also a lot of fun. It's like, okay, I can create an attack which is called "It's Full of Stars," and then I can just be evocative with the language and just say that, well, you look into the Lich's eyes and it's full of stars. You are pulled into the space and emptiness of the void and blah, 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 blah. And it's also, of course, a popular cultural reference, which is perfect. It's sort of like a fun reference in the name, and there's a cool effect, and it sort of like makes the monster memorable.
Absolutely. I've pulled up the white from the Dragonbane Bestiary, and so there's, for those that haven't seen the Bestiary or looked through the Dragonbane core rulebook and seen the way the monster laid out, there's a wonderful quotation from a character that gives a sometimes haunting description of what these monsters are. A bit of the lore. Go on, please.
I must say that I didn't write those. That's Matthias. I think that's Matthias from Free League who added those, the quotations. Glory to those who deserve it.
But there's quotations. There's a bit of lore. There's how to use them in random encounters. Each one comes with an adventure seed, which I think is really, really useful. But for the white, we have, what was the one? Crippling cold. The white grabs an unfortunate victim who feels the chill of death spread through their body. If you just read that to a player and they're feeling it in character, that just evoke, and then it goes into the mechanical stuff and sort of keeps the game moving. But these, as you mentioned, these types of descriptions allow the GM to play with the encounter, create that narrative with the group. And please.
One attack that I really, really like. I can't remember if I wrote it or if someone else wrote it, but it's the living tree. What's that named in English? The treant, exactly. I think it has an attack. It has a monster attack, which a flock of birds flies into the scene and chaos erupts. That kind of thing. I love it. I love it, and I'm not sure if I wrote it or if Free League did. If it's in the core book, then Free League wrote
it's Bestiary Treekin.
Oh, Treekin.
Death from above. A swarm of small birds swoops down on opponents within 10 meters, and they all suffer damage. Again, if you want the mechanical side of stuff, please pick up the Bestiary for Dragonbane. It's phenomenal. The artwork is fantastic as well.
It is. It is. I've never met the illustrator, actually.
Oh, there you go.
But he lives in the same city as I do.
It's a small world, just not quite small enough.
It is.
So, with all of these things in place, what are you've worked on a number of different projects and games and things. You mentioned Kult there, and we'll circle back to that in a moment. But are you working on anything beyond what you've mentioned just then for Dragonbane? Is there more in the pipeline for you coming?
I did write a scenario that was used in at the GothCon, which is the Gothenburg role-playing gaming convention, where we did the official Free League Dragonbane thing there this year, the Bane of the Alder Tree, and we are looking into how to develop that further. But that's a short thing. I'm writing at the moment a book about the Swedish role-playing history for the American market. That takes up most of my time. So I'm not involved in any big role-playing projects at the moment, except for a Kickstarter, which is a third-party Kickstarter to adapt the Lone Wolf world to Dragonbane.
Okay.
But that will only be in Swedish due to licensing agreements. But that's sort of like a thing I'm helping with, being the rules person and the monster person.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned writing, and one of the games you mentioned, Kult, is very, very different from Dragonbane. What was it like to not only shift systems but completely shift tone almost? While they are both down to earth. Kult is very much earth and earth above and earth below, and covers some very adult and mature themes, which it handles superbly
Oh
well.
yeah. It does. It does. I've been thinking about that myself. That there's some sort of paradox there. Is that when I write for Dragonbane, I try to evoke fairy tale themes. One project that is on the back burner is a conversion of an old Dragonbane adventure, which is called Secrets of the Winter Woods, which is sort of like a fairy tale about spring being trapped in a valley, and which turns it into eternal winter, and it's lots of fairy tale things in there. That's Trollspire as well, and some other Dragonbane material I've done is very much folklore, fairy tale material. But the Kult material I've worked on are more Hellraiser, more visceral, gore, filled adventures. We were talking about His Last Hope. No, not His Last Hope. Gallery of Souls. Gallery of Souls. And that was. I remember one of my friends, who's now a friend, and the first time we met, he's like, "Okay, so who are you?" I'm Magnus. I work on Cult. Oh, okay. Hey, hang on. Didn't you write the Gallery of Souls? Yeah. Wow, I always wondered what you looked like, because who could write the scene in the bathroom with the guy with the pencil stuck in his eye? That was, and that was like, it's sort of like, okay, so you're the guy who wrote all that, and you're totally not that kind of person. No one is that kind of person who would do that kind of thing. But it's there are two sides to me, three if you count the cyberpunk material I've done. But I think that horror has always fascinated me, and I am terrified of horror. I'm terrified of horror movies, and I like to explore that part of me as well. Whereas the fantasy I write, I don't really feel that that is the place for that kind of horror when games like Call of Cthulhu and Kult exists. It's not a very big shift in my head. If I would start writing a horror scenario, I wouldn't have to go through a fasting and cleansing of the mind for 30 days before I could write horror, because there are two totally different things. Basically, there are two mindsets that can exist next to each other. Basically, because it's more like, my horror stuff is more shock and horror and for effect than my fantasy stuff, which is also maybe why the why Gallery of Souls is sort of like, it's been it's been described as a good introduction to what Cult is, and it was written originally as an introduction to Cult, and that was also His Last Hope that I mentioned, which is another Cult adventure that I did, which I'm very very happy with. That was actually the introductory scenario in the second Cult edition, and I wanted it to be very immediate, very very in people's face, and maybe that overdid it a bit. It's my Cult stuff is not sort of like, well, something is strange, and gradually you discover something that is strange. It's like, here it is in your face, deal with it. More an action movie than a horror movie, actually.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. It's very much it's less about the sort of the influence from behind the scenes, and more about, as you say, it's there, it's happened, it's happening, it's coming for you. Especially in respect to Lost Gallery of Souls, there's yes,
Gallery of Souls, with the Kairoth when it comes, it's and I feel that them being very short as well, not very short, but fairly short, basically, means that I can be very much more direct when it comes to the effects and everything, because you don't have time. If you would have a campaign that like Black Madonna, which is an entire campaign. You can be more subtle and sort of build things up, whereas the shorter stuff, I feel myself, they have to be really visceral and really, really effectful. Whereas when I write for Dragonbane, I write more slow and much more nice. I expect people to be heroes, the players to be
Yeah.
heroes. I hope they are heroes
Mm.
anyway. And I try to give them plenty of opportunities to role play and solve things, not by
Mm.
fighting, but by talking or just exploring things. And they wake up in the morning and the dew in the grass and the sun is up and things like that. But if it would be Cult, they would wake up in the morning and there would be blood in the grass and the sun wouldn't rise and everything would be horrible.
Yes, yes, they are very, very different experiences, and I
Mhm.
am a fan of each of your work in both,
Good.
for sure. So you've written for a number of systems. You've played a number of different systems. Are there any systems that you haven't played yet that you would like to play? You mentioned you've got a lot of work and other things to distract you, but you are still, I imagine, a gamer at heart.
We play every second week with one group, and then I have another group that meets intermittently in a gaming cellar basement in the old town of
Mm.
Stockholm. And we play Frostgrave in the basement. We play mostly miniature
Okay.
focused games like Frostgrave and 40K,
Mm.
and also Dungeons and Dragons 4, which is a very good game, even though it isn't really what Dungeons and Dragons uh, was to us. I think it's a really, really good game still, so we play it. But then the every other week is together with a group of friends where we have 5 game masters. So we sort of rotate the game
Okay.
mastering, and we've been playing Alien, we've been playing Väsen. Now we're playing Magnus Seter, and we've tried different
Yeah.
games. So it's old school essentials
Mm.
as well, going back to the old school Dungeons and Dragons feel. And that way I get to try the games that interest me. Someone will probably run it, or I might
Yeah.
run it. Basically, I did. We switched formats basically because I did run uh, Forbidden Lands campaign for 4
Oh
5 years
wow.
or something like that, and during the COVID, we had that sort of like a break, but still, it's like a lot of time. So now we're saying that one game, 6, 8, 10 sessions max, and then we try something
Mm.
different. And I've been thinking, okay, what would I want to try? And I don't really know
That's fair.
at the moment. We have said we don't want to play free league games because
Because you played a
we
number of them. I just
I
just
played a number of
rolling
them.
those titles off.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's like in the group is Don Alstrand, who works on all the
Mm.
books for Free League, basically, and me, who occasionally works for Free League, and Christian Salén, who wrote
Yeah.
Cyborg. And then we have some other people who are really
Mm.
talented, who are also designers. So sometimes we get really sort of like tired of ourselves. We want to try something else, something someone
Yeah,
else
of
has done.
course.
But it's mostly smaller
Mm.
things like Mouse Ritter and Merkborg hacks and stuff like that interests me the most. But yeah, Dragonbane being released here and really uh, released something within me as
Mm.
well when it comes to writing. I've written 5 or 6 articles for Phoenix over the year, and I wrote the Dragon. I contributed to the Dragonbane Bestiary, and I'm writing some other stuff. So Dragonbane is the focus now, which means that we don't actually play it that much
Fair enough.
because we're so tied up with it
Yes.
anyway. Um, so I'm not really sure what interests me. I know that there are some Year Zero games, of course, that are interesting, but then it's a Year Zero game again. I'm thoroughly though looking forward to, if it ever comes out. Is it called Black Flag, the pirate game, uh, but with the Year Zero engine?
Yes.
I think that's. I heard an interview with the guy who's behind that years and years ago, and I really look forward to that. But it seems stuck in development hell.
Okay.
But until then, I sort of. I sort of have to make do with one of the most fabulous games I've picked up over the last year, and that is Pirate Borg, which is the epitome of small, close to the edge, close to the hilt, is what I mean. Immediate and in-your-face gaming. And it's also got horror, so it's sort of like, and I love pirates, I love Warren Fence Roleplay, I love Kult, Cthulhu. It's got everything in one small package. So that's something that I would like to run, and I would also like to try to write something for it as a third party thing, because it really it hits all the right notes for me.
Absolutely. I don't have a bookshelf because I'm moving everything around, but I do. I have that ready to go on the bookshelf. Have enjoyed reading that, and managed to interview the creator, I guess, the designer. But
Luke,
Luke Stratton,
yeah.
Living
Yeah.
from. So
I must give a shout out to Luke, and I can't remember his brother, but I ordered the on the last day of the campaign, Kickstarter campaign, I think it was. I ordered it, and they were like, "Yeah, great, now you'll have it next week." And it didn't turn up, and it didn't turn up, and it didn't turn up, and that was sort of like the Games Quest debacle that was a couple of years ago, where the Games Quest didn't ship anything at all. And finally, I think Luke just said, "Well, screw it. I've taken back your order from Games Quest, and I'm shipping it to you from the States." And they shipped everything to me from the States. Great customer service, great guys, and fun to listen to as well.
Fun to listen to, fun to get to know, and as you mentioned, Pirate Borg is a great setting, but not to detract from. So you mentioned, we've been discussing Dragonbane and about being the heroes and lower level heroes or ground level heroes and solving things, not necessarily through violence. If you want to be less unscrupulous, without scruples, you can pick up Forbidden Lands, which you've also written for, and just go out there and be the worst of the worst mercenary.
And that's sort of that's one way of playing the game. That's fairly common. But the fun thing there is that I wrote the Bitter Reach, or Bitter Reach is that's the book of the name of the book is, and it's much more of a horror setting than what I do write for Dragonbane. It's an unforbidding setting where you basically die if you just go out in the snow and just don't take precautions. It's really harsh, and I've tried to sort of not get inspired by the beautiful snowy vistas of the northern Sweden, but instead by The Thing, The Terror, the TV series, and stuff like that. So that's sort of like, and I've also tried to sort of hint at Cthulhuian influences as well that are sort of in the background of that setting. So it's a lot harsher than anything I've ever done fantasy wise.
Just I pulled up the available from the Free League store. You can pick up the GM things, and there's like the maps of Nightfall and Bleakness Keep, which definitely lives up to the name. So yeah, sorry, I sort of cut you off there a little bit. I apologize.
Yeah, I just love the cover as well. If there's one thing that Free League does that really draws me in when it comes to all their games, I don't work on all their games. I just work on Dragonbane, and I did work on Forbidden Lands. But the artwork draws me in, and the artwork is fabulous. And for Bitter Reach, Alvaro Tapia, who did the cover and the interior illustrations, did a bang up job. And also Johan Egerkals, who's illustrated the Dragonbane stuff. He's an old acquaintance of mine, and he's sort of He did the Vaesen thing, which is his own property, basically. The Vaesen thing is something that Free League licensed his books about the Nordic Vaesen, and did a game out of that, written by Nils Hintze, which is one of our star writers here in Sweden. Really good writer. He did a Walking Dead game as well. But the artwork is always so good. Like Coriolis, the Coriolis Kickstarter now is really, really, really nice. Still, it's really nice, but it also has a sort of like quality to it that is different from, for example, Dungeons and Dragons has very good art, but it's from very many artists. So there's sort of like not a style to it. Dragonbane is a very very clear style. It has a very clear style to it, and also Coriolis and Alien and everything has a style. Their art direction is impeccable.
I 100% agree. You know when you see a book, one, it's Free League because of the quality, and two, just which you can identify just by the colors used or the brush strokes, which game you could take the names off, the titles off, and you could identify which book belongs in which gaming series. And it's so fantastic. They carry that through, as you say, the consistency and the support to the artists. It nearly used a completely wrong word there.
So it's that's also why it's so much fun working for Free League, because if just the process of working differs, of course, for every writer. I'm not privy to how other writers work, but for me, it's more of a question of I do my stuff. Thomas sort of directs me and says, "Well, we want this. Okay, I'll do some preliminary writing. Is that something you like? Oh yeah, sure, more of this, and let's check in 2 months." And then I just, with the Dragonbane Bestiary, I sat there for 2 months just sending monsters. Oh, here's a new monster, here's a new monster, here's a new monster, here's a new monster. And okay, are you done? Yes, I'm done now. Okay, great. And then they sat down and developed my texts, which is something that I find works very well, because it means that I'm not the sole voice of the Bestiary. I know that I don't see many interviews with Matthias. Some I do, but Free League are more sort of like not as prone to just blabber on about what they do like I do. So it's very important for me to just say that it's always working with the Free League is always a very rewarding task, and it's also teamwork. I did the first draft of everything, then Thomas, Matthias, and Andreas developed that into what is now the Bestiary. So it's important for me that people don't think of me as, well, Magnus wrote the Bestiary. No, I was one of the writers of the Bestiary. Yeah, I wrote a lot of it, but that has since been developed and into a higher level, and that's something that I feel that some new writers, for example, sort of like forget or don't really realize that is the case often. That what they send in is not actually often what is published. Someone else develops it further, and if you don't like that, it can be quite hard to work with role-playing game development if you want to work with the publishers.
Of course.
If you want to do it yourself, just do it, and it can be fantastic. Merkborg, for example, there are so many good stuff, so many good things that comes out from Merkborg from one person shops. And that's a great thing about the creativity that is sort of like rampant in the community. Merkborg has exploded, and Dragonbane has a lot of stuff like that. And I feel that that's also a very good way to cut your teeth on developing stuff. It's like, do your own stuff, ask someone to draw it if you can't draw it yourself. Put it down in the PDF. You can do that from Microsoft Word if you really have to. But if you can use a layout program, it'll look a lot nicer. Then just put it out for people to look at. But if you write for a publisher, be prepared to work in a team of people. And that is always also the artist. In this case, I had all the art before I started writing, which is not very common. But normally the artist is also part of the team.
Of course.
And I think that shows in the free lead material, is that everything is a work of a team with a common goal and strong creative vision, and also strong creative integrity and strong design integrity. Because normally, but if there's a flashy game out, you would think, well, it's a flashy game, but what's the mechanics like? In a free league game, you say, wow, this looks great. And since it's free league, I know it's a good game.
Yeah, 100%.
Some stuff could be better. Some stuff doesn't appeal to me, but it is always a good game in there.
Absolutely.
And it looks good.
Yeah. So, Magnus, we've covered a great many things, and thankfully so. You've been very forthcoming and very honest and very insightful with your answers to the various questions and topics we've touched on. Is there anything at this point of the interview that we haven't covered yet you want to cover just before we close?
Well, we did touch on the inclusivity thing, and I think that one thing that I've sort of sat down a couple of years ago and thought to myself, well, what can I do to? I didn't sit down and think, what can I do to help the community be more inclusive? I just sat down and thought, okay, what can I do that will make people enjoy role-playing games more? And for me, it's a question of trying to help people step away from the negativity, step away from Twitter drama. And I sort of think that those of us who have played a long time can help new gamers by simply listening to them. Listen to their stories about their PCs. We've been there ourselves, talking about our PCs until people fled. But we can help new gamers by listening to them, by taking them seriously, by not throwing our experience in their faces, saying, well, I know, I've done everything. Just tell them that sounds interesting, that sounds cool. And also, I think that it's important for us as a community to become more outspoken when it comes to what we think is good. You did something good, I like this, instead of I hate this. And if we could move away from the I hate this type of conversation, which is very prolific, it's very common, because it draws people. You get engaged, and you're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. Everyone's wrong, and everyone hates each other. It's like, that's not the community that I know. When people say, well, the role-playing community is so toxic, I don't. The Twitter community is toxic to a large degree, but there are groups within Twitter as well who are not. And the face-to-face gaming that I play, the gamers I meet, because I meet a lot of gamers, are friendly and creative and compassionate, and also passionate about their games. And if we could just elevate that to being what we think about the hobby, instead of thinking about it as, well, everyone is angry at each other. No, some people are angry at each other, but they're mostly just screaming into the void. The rest of us are over here playing games with each other.
Absolutely. Well, that's insightful and inspiring, aspirational. So thank you so much for adding that here at the end. Would you like to remind everybody where they can find you, Dragonbane, and all the things you're associated with, please, Magnus?
For Dragonbane material, you should always start with the Free League website, freeleague.se, I think. And there you can buy the game, of course. But then you should sign up to the Dragonbane Discord group, which is a fabulous resource. Then you go to Facebook, and in the Dragonbane Facebook group is where you can find me, where I post small snippets of stuff I think are interesting or fun, and where I try to just give advice and just remind everyone that we have everyone been a newcomer. I would like and I think it is, the Dragonbane Facebook group is a place where people come in and say, well, this might be a stupid question. And what they get for an answer is, there are no stupid questions. And if you're interested in Dragonbane and haven't decided to start yet, you could just join the Facebook group, ask questions, and people will treat you as a fellow human being, and you can get your answers, however basic they are, for those who are already in the group. So Facebook is a good place. And if you speak Swedish, read Swedish, basically, you can go to rollspel.nu and join the forums there.
Right.
You can write in English there as well, and we will answer. And then, of course, but it's a mainly Swedish discussion forum. We've got over 1 million posts, actually. Wow. So we're actually classified as a mega forum or something like that.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Magnus. I will make sure there are links down in the descriptions below, so please scroll down,
cool.
Support Magnus, support Dragonbane, support Free League, third-party publishers, your friendly local game stores, and all those sorts of good things, and just be good in the community. But yeah, scroll down, follow those links, and support everything that we've mentioned during this interview. Magnus, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show to discuss Dragonbane, Kult, and all the other topics we've covered during the course of the interview. I'd love to get you back on the show in the future, if you'd be willing to come back and join me, of course.
I would most certainly do. And I think that in a year or so, we will have my book about the Swedish role-playing game history to speak about. And I think that would be interesting for people to hear about. And I certainly hope that I get an opportunity to return and talk about other Dragonbane stuff that I've done in the future.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to our future interviews. Thank you, Magnus, so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the show, then go to www.snydersreturn.squarespace.com. Alternatively, you can find us over on Twitter @ReturnSnyder. We have a Linktree link in the description of this episode. And if you want to support us, come and join us over on Patreon. And we also have a Discord server. Please leave us a review, because we'd love to learn how to improve the channel and provide better content out for those who are listening. Until we speak again, thank you.